Man, Abe, you back, baby. We are back as well. Welcome to the Lyrical Ones podcast. This is episode 51. Per usual, with gratitude, thankfulness, every sense of appreciation for life today.
Mm.
Al Fluent, how are you doing?
I'm well, brother. I'm ecstatic to be here another day. Like I've said before, waking up is my favorite part of the day. It allows everything else to happen. Um, so I'm in a space of gratitude as well. We have a great guest. Well, I guess it remains to be seen, but I think he'll be a great guest and, complete the trio today. And can you introduce us today?
Oh, for sure. You know, for those that have been with us now, 51 episodes in, 51 weeks, this is a trip thinking about that out loud. Just to give y'all that sense of space and time, I am Cincinio, and we are joined here with Art Hooker. Art, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, brothers.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
And what I want to know is what brings you to the Lyrical Ones podcast this evening?
What brings me here, Cross Allan sent me an invite. I met him in Southern California some time ago. How many years? It's been maybe like 4 years or so. And we've been building, and I was just inspired by like his work and passion. And he sent me an invite to come spend a little time.
Okay, that's what's up.
Is that the kind of answer? Was I supposed to give something else? Was I supposed to give something deep philosophical?
You can give
us.
I was
supposed to be like,
we
wear the mask, and then I can freestyle. A mask, something about a mask if you want, but it won't be that good though. It'll probably be like a '90s freestyle. So you don't want to do that.
I got you. Freestyle, you start off and then I'll take it off in a different direction. It's all good. It's really we here to uplift those that come to join us and host for just making sure we're able to raise the positivity for everyone because we realize everyone has that thing, right? Whatever that thing is and how you describe that thing, you obviously operate, function, and have your relationships within this world. You've had your levels of impact and continue to have impact on people. And I think it's important for us to highlight that. And, however you want to come to the pod today, let me just kind of put it out there, this is a space for you to be yourself, right? To truly be as authentic as you see necessary, because this is for people who are looking for some positivity, looking some reinforcement for something that isn't going to tear other people down or break things down. Like we do get in the nitty gritty of things, and we do try and get to the bottom of whatever needs to be nipped in the bud, but we don't do it in a disrespectful way, right? We try to do it in a way that's very critical and understanding, compassionate, and assertive, direct, and clear. So by all means, man, I'm glad you're here. Cross, as always, looking out. Jay-Z at the pod, you don't see him, but he here. Subliminal game. But I think it's incredible that most people who come here, right, it's through the network of Lyrical Ones, Lyrical Opposition. And so, like you said, you met him in Southern California. What was going on? Was it an event happening? Was this like, a random mixer? Like how did this transpire?
Basically, man, what was I? So I've been working, so I basically study creativity, passion, and movements and change globally for the last 15, 20 years. And so I've been spending a lot of time just doing qualitative analysis. And I can tell you more about like what really triggered that if we want to talk more about it. But in the process of this, I lived overseas for a bit and did a lot of different things. And so when I was in the States, I was continuing this research, and I came across this dude that gave me more information and the way his thought process was really different than anybody else I talked to. And his name is Dave Gibbons, and Dave is like Marina Abramovic's spiritual advisor. Marina Abramovic is Lady Gaga's spiritual advisor. So it's like that's kind of esoteric kind of intriguing sort of dude. So I started kind of following him around really the country and really in actually other countries, just learning from him. And I was in Southern California, going through like a learning, sort of like a facilitated like learning experience. And that's where I met Christian. Christian and I were in the same sort of cohort. And I think that's where we first met.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so, in that year of, I mean, you were just seeing how this person kind of just does what they do in terms of their thought process. I mean, how do you even get to a point where that's something that you can do and sustain yourself? Like what is the journey to trajectory to get you in that position? Because that is a very unique circumstance to be in, at least from my level of ignorance.
Like, so how do you support yourself while you're studying the world, basically?
Pretty much.
Yeah, well, very carefully. Number one, I think it's a thing about, so my journey is kind of, it's interesting because it started off, I've always been fascinated with passion and purpose. And what I started to do is I realized that you can't wait for opportunity to come. So you got to discover, okay, once you discover what your passion is and what your purpose is, even if the opportunity may not seem like it's presenting itself, you find creative ways to do it. And so I first started this journey. I was a bill collector, actually. I was a bill collector like back in the day. It was in college. Actually, I was after college, and I was producing theater, doing like a lot of creative stuff, but couldn't pay no bills. So I had to, and then I got married. And then my wife's like, yo, what are you doing? So I'm like, I go get a job, being a bill collector. On the phone one day, I was about to get fired, actually. I was late to work. I was late to work. My boss showed up. She looked at me, and I looked at her nose, and it had a little string of sweat just dripped down her nose. And she's like, if you late again, I'm gonna fire you. And she said it like when they nose sweat, that means that they're really angry, like something's really going down. It's like it's for real. And so I'm like, yo. So I sit down and I get on the phone, and I was on the phone with this lady, and she was just going in on me. She was just like, she was asking, why are you calling about my bills? And I was already depressed. I was nervous. My boss probably had a headphone on, listening to see what I was gonna say to the lady. And I'll never forget this. Her name was Miss Dorothy. And Miss Dorothy was just going off. And then I just had this epiphany when I was on the call. I had this epiphany that my passion was really connecting with people and helping them solve problems. And at that moment, I actually, instead of being offended by her being angry at me, I helped Miss Dorothy realize that I wasn't the problem. She wasn't a problem, but we could work together to look at the problem. Right. And about the end of that call, she had made her payment and we had arrangements. It's called reason for delay. It's what that is. Whenever you get behind, they ask you, what if you ever talk to a bill collector, not that anybody ever has on there, but if you ever have,
let me call right now.
But they'll ask you, why did you get behind? And a real bill collector is never supposed to let you off the phone without knowing why you got behind, because that's how they figure out how to make sure you stay up to date, is by understanding the reason for delay. So anyway, I had this epiphany through that call, and I started realizing my passion, and what my passion was communication. And I got this process in my mind around my passion and my purpose. And in about 6 months, I became the best bill collector. I got a new job. My income increased 50% just over those epiphanies I got on the phone call. And when I started doing that, then I started finding different ways to interview people, study like, okay, what is your passion? How does that passion turn into money? And I just did that all around the world. I found different jobs to do that. And then I became a global facilitator. I was working at a bank. I was traveling around doing that. So I always found a way, because the thing about it is the key to doing that kind of work is being able to make the connection between where you are and where you want to be. And then, because passion is something, it is a desire that is so strong that you're willing to suffer in order to obtain a goal. So you have to, if you discover what your real passion is, it also gives you the ability to be ready to suffer
Right.
because you know that it's going to be worth it, and it's this is a fuel to get there. And as soon as that suffering, you can see purpose in it. That's game changer because then you realize, okay, and if you do that right, eventually you figure out how to make money at it. And that's basically what I did. And I did that from having it as a side hustle, but it always was driving me to the point to where it became my main hustle, and then it became like a business, and to this day, it's sort of what I'm doing and how I'm supporting my family.
That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, my goodness, I'm like, let me go call up my boss. I quit today. I'm out. I got to go. This is not suiting my purpose. I got to leave. But I feel that, like, I truly feel that, because a lot of people oftentimes don't really make the connection, right? They sometimes pacify their passions to sustain themselves through suffering in a different capacity, right? They'll take on these responsibilities, take on these roles, and you speak to it, right? You realize you said I got married and my wife is like, so I'm like, okay, you know what? The responsible thing for me to do is be a financial contributor to our household. But more importantly, through this journey, I discovered there's other means, other methods for me to still do that, but also satisfy myself in helping other people, right? And I think that it's a profound discovery most people don't even realize. So yeah, that's definitely what's up. Affluent.
Yes. So Art, it's interesting because I would like to know, when did you realize the theme of connecting to people was prevalent in your life? And like, what did it look like, growing up, to either have those connections or not have those connections that made it a passion for you?
What do you mean we say connecting to people?
So you said, like, the part of your passion was that you enjoy connecting to people.
Oh yeah. Cool. Yeah.
So how did you notice that? And then when you're growing up, did you have that or not have that? And what did those things look like, that the theme in your life?
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's one of those things where I think to actually realize it is really more of a divine sort of thing, where the divine like lets you be awakened to like, oh snap, this is how I got here, right? And so, but when I look back, like that was a theme throughout everything that ever happened to me. I mean, so I was for whatever reason, my parents, I lived in like a lot of the hardest hoods in Dallas Fort Worth. So I lived in Oak Cliff. And then I lived in a place called Stop 6. And then after being in those hoods for a while, my parents, for whatever reason, thought they was going to keep me out of trouble, and they moved me into a poor white neighborhood that fed into a rich high school. And so what's really interesting about that is it's really crazy, right? So what happened, I lived in all those different places and I never fit in, but every space that I was in, I was able to connect to people. And it's also probably why I'm able to do what I do today, because I can work with anybody, connect with anybody. So from like, I had, this is not even a joke. I had multiple Bootsies. So it was like, there are 3 different guys named Bootsy that wanted to either kill me, take my bike, or fight me, or take advantage of me. And they kept showing up. I need to put this in a book. It was like 3 different Bootsies. And I remember when I was in Oak Cliff at first, they used to want to fight me because of the way I talk. And this is really funny because I'll be born in the hood. All my family's in the hood. And this is in the South. So South may be different than the West Coast, but I mean, there's some similarities and stuff. But right. I mean, the way I talk now is the way I always talked, and they would be like, "Man, why you talk like that?" And I'd be like, "Talk like what, Stanley? I don't know what you mean. Why you talk like that?" And I'm like, "Stanley, why?" He's like, for some reason I don't like you, and I never forget this because Stanley had some snot coming out of his nose. And back in the day, it was little kids that had snot and it would dry up a little bit. For some reason, they would never wipe their noses, but the bullies always had snot. But anyway, so I had a lot of those kind of things.
Yeah. That's why they mad.
He's like, I need to wipe my nose.
I can't never stop my nose from running. No.
Yeah.
So I got to take it out on you.
Yeah. And the problem is, it's probably much deeper. It really kind of talks about like health and the Black community and just stuff that that you don't even know, you're not even what I realize is that we've overcome things that we didn't even know we were overcoming.
Yeah.
And that's the power of resilience in that sort of space, right? But anyway, so I just saw a lot of different places. So I had people want to take my bike; they wanted to steal my bike from me, and I learned how to negotiate to stop them from doing that. And like I remember the guy was like, "I'm gonna take your bike." I was like, "So why are you doing this?" And he seemed to be shocked at me asking why, and so we could connect on it, right? Which time I had my first fight, and dude was like, we was fighting, and I punched him real hard because I was real good. I can get you a really good punch, or I can squeeze the mess out of you, right? And so we was wrestling. And after the fight, I was like, "Yo, like, why? It always went back to, because the way you connect with somebody is it's empathy. That's something I have a skill for. So the first step of that is putting yourself in their shoes. So for me, like, people aren't used to you doing that, at least especially in conflict scenarios. And so I started seeing that theme across, like, dealing with bullies. And then I even had more violent bullies, where I had one bully that was kind of off. I won't say his name, but he was like, my dad, he said, I went home and my dad told me to kill you. And
he might as well be Bootsy too.
Yeah, he wasn't Bootsy, he had a different name. But he was serious. He was serious.
Yeah.
Because he was, and it was interesting, like, navigating those kind of things. And then I moved into a racist neighborhood where, like, people wore stuff like the South will rise again, Confederate flags. Like, we would play in the streets and everybody else could get cold drinks from the house, and the parents would send me to the water hose, So it's like stuff like that, to where you just learn how to navigate all these different types of things. And so I saw that pattern, but the thing that worked for me all the way through was always some sort of opportunity to speak or connect with people in a way that showed that we were all really the same in the core of it. But then our culture is what makes us different and unique.
That
might be a lot.
That goes with the theme of Lyrical Ones, where we really try to speak to the community and invite the community to interact and engage. And we believe that everyone is a lyrical one if they're listening or not listening.
I love it.
The fact that they that we all have stories, and we're all co-creating in those stories. And we, like you said, empathy, but like we learn each other's history, we learn each other's story. That's how we respect each other. That's how we love each other, right? By making that opportunity to listen.
Yeah. That's what's up, man. I love it.
Connecting on those points of empathy, who in your life was able to instill, like, where did that come from? Was that given to you? Was that something you developed over time? Empathy. How did that transpire and grow within you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really think about that. I think it's probably comes from a little bit from my spiritual heritage, from my mom. I was raised in a Pentecostal environment, and was intriguing about me. I mean, like, straight up Pentecostal, where they dance and sing and fall out on the floor, cast out demons. That was the kind of scenario. And over the years, I was actually embarrassed of it before. I probably never really, honestly, ever talked about it now, because I tried to get as far away from it as I could. And then after spending some time in Africa, it was interesting. I was in Kenya, in Nairobi, outside of Nairobi, and I saw some of the same spiritual practices that I witnessed growing up, with laying on the hands, to dancing, a lot of ritualistic things. And then that hit me like, this Pentecostal tradition, you see what I'm saying? Like, it was the same beats, the same dance, the same kind of feel. And so I learned, so I had a hybrid of that growing up around what people really would call maybe intuition, or being able to sense what's around you, to feel how other people are feeling. And what I didn't realize was that was really something tied beyond, it was more like an epigenetics type of situation, where it's like something that it's in your DNA and you don't even know it. And Pentecostalism is one of the expressions in the Americas, I think, or modern engagement, where people have where that sort of arisen.
Right.
And so the empathy for me was when I sort of removed myself from the institutional confines of the physical church and started to explore, okay, how do we create, how do I connect with the world in a way that engages society for the greater good? And so, and this is what I'm saying is this is an epiphany I had when I was 11 years old, where I was
Right.
like, okay, if I'm going to engage, if I'm gonna be here, and I'm living in some difficult times, we were poor. Sometimes the situations, um, no hate or shade on my family, but if there was a, you can be in abusive scenarios. So it's like people that have the empathy ability, it gives you, it's painful, but you can also, um, it's a superpower later on when you learn what that actually is. So I credit the empathy from my deep Pentecostal roots and experience spiritually, and then I started to see that sort of as a refined, and I got to live in the world with it outside of religiosity. That's when I really realized that that was something I was developing. I don't think it was conscious. It became very conscious when I when I was able to look at my growing up experience. And my great uncle was John Lee Hooker. So the churches I went to, they actually played the blues. So like the preacher would be on the guitar and he'd be bump, 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 and he'd be oh, and Jesus
Oh, that's
came down,
vibes.
and that's how they did it, right? And it was like,
Yeah.
but I didn't know what that was growing up. But they would play it all. I mean, it would be till like 2 o'clock in the morning. Oh, bump, 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 and then but they would call the actual blues the devil's music. So anything that wasn't there, they would call it the devil's music. So
Right.
but the reason my particular sect did that is because they all came from the blues. Literally, they had played the blues, and then it just translated to the church culture, music, and there was like blues and like I would almost call it like a dirty jazz kind of bluesy sort of. So when I look back, I'm like that music was amazing. It's sort of what's informed some of my musical sort of work and writing now because of just growing up like that over the years. So I know that kind of went off into the ether, but yeah.
Nah. Like I think it's really important that we acknowledge how our bodies remember,
Mm-hmm.
and keep tabs on, what we're not necessarily paying attention to,
Mm-hmm.
with the rest of our senses. That
Mm-hmm.
our bodies are processing things and holding on to things,
Mm-hmm.
and informing us later on how to navigate the world, and then also what our voices are as we create, right? What we believe may not be there, or when we create a new thing, that it's informed by our heritage, about our history, our past. And there's so much of that's loaded or contained in our DNA, um, just through our experiences, and as we pursue that higher self, or that full self, um, or our purposed self, right? We start to look into um, our past and say, oh, this is where that came from, this is where that came from. And my voice is authentic, not because I'm copying anyone, but because things were given to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that context, that background, that historical landmark information it lays down the foundation for the present, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, yeah, like because it's like, not to speak for you, but I identify with what you say from my own experience of how my own aunties would hoot and holler in church, right? Being in
Mm-hmm.
the traditional Baptist church, and that
Mm-hmm.
connection of like, am I feeling this way? Not in the time, right? It's not until you can reflect on it with your being informed and experienced and
Mm-hmm.
educated in a way to have self-reflection of a different scope where you can say, am I feeling this heat on my back from them expressing themselves because society doesn't give space for this to be normal? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I looking at society and looking at how everybody else operates? And when I'm in the confines of this environment with my community, with people that look like me, that are of me, and then I feel a type of way, seeing how they express themselves. It's just in a form of expression, right?
Mm.
And now I feel this sense of like, well, does this resonate with what I see on TV? Does this resonate with what I see at school? Does this resonate with my friends, with these different environments that I'm in? And then I got to step back even further and say, American society, have you given me space to feel safe to express myself in these ways? Right. And that's just something, when I hear you say that, it speaks to those volumes that I go into my echo chamber of time to really reflect and think back on, like, yeah, like there is pieces where you don't even realize. Because I remember watching different movies where they highlight that, where it's like, oh, let's focus on a modern event and then see how it connects to something that is historically from a different country, right? That, we all say African American, but that's a continent, right? When we talk about the specific like countries in Africa, right? It's this separation of like, we know we Black, we know we have ties to Africa, but to what degree, to what level of depth? And then when you say you go to Kenya and you see it and you're like, I already know this. This is already, I traveled all the way here, right? Knowing that there's more of some type of essence that comes from a foundational standpoint, right? Where it's like, we could take it to the language, we could take it to the township of what people live in, and know this is where they're from. There's history, there's heritage, there's a legacy here. To then say, oh yeah, but when I was in the Pentecostal church, we were doing some of the same things, right? The language might be different, the music might be different. Yeah, we living in a different state, but there's so much of the similarities and the parallels, right? And I think that it's incredible for you to say that, because I think a lot of people don't always associate how we gravitate to certain things, or certain things are exposed to us, not even realizing there's these foundational like legacy kind of inheritance, right? On a spiritual level, on a metaphysical level, that we don't always bring it to the forefront until much later, when we can reflect and be like, nah, that's who we are. That's who I am. That's what I came from. And so, when you say empathy and how it was, given, or, kind of grown within you in the setting of the church, right? It's to me, it kind of speaks to like your journey within your own faith. And how does that correlate to the work that you do, right? When you're saying connecting with people, helping them discover the problem, how much of that reinforces or maybe differs from what it is that you passionate about?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I'm really like a student of culture, and really specific culture, because to people, and culture is basically a system of traditions and beliefs. And so when you start looking at traditions and beliefs and rituals, then that helps you sort of like really kind of dig into it. So my faith is essential because like I listen to the Spirit like in everything, in every space, so I can navigate, right? And what's interesting is that's not, in the way I practice it is really interesting, because I try to get to the core of like who I am as a human, and then beyond that. And what's interesting about that too is it's just this idea of, and this is where empathy comes into, is we understand that every human is indigenous from somewhere. So every culture you look at, so it's what's interesting is when people, if they start to really see this, you have a very different look. Because if you look at people, so if an Irish person, they are indigenous to some other place. They're not indigenous to here, but they have indigenous people that looked like, acted like, and had spiritual practices similar to the types of things that we would have experienced in other places, right? And so when I do the work that I do, I'm looking at that as a core, where that is the way the civilization is developed in many different ways, both good and bad. But it all comes back to that we are all humans formed of clay, and with these spiritual practices that are tied to the earth. And then there's these different ways to sort of look at that. So for instance, when I was in Mumbai, my first time, because I lived in India for 2 years, the first time, for my first trip to Mumbai, I was there during the Ganesh festival, and it was so cool. And I think I was also there doing Diwali. And I think what I'm going to tell you the stories about Diwali when I was there for Diwali. I was there for Diwali, but Ganesh Festival is dope too. I mean, and Ganesha is like the god of open doors, right? So it's got like the arms and like you can pull up and you can see like there's little side. Yeah. There's little side, like and it was dope because you could go. I remember being in Navi Mumbai, and they have these little places you could stop on the side of the road and go in and pray. And so I got to go see all that stuff, and but it was very similar to Christianity in America as far as how accessible it was. But I'll never forget like the way that it connected to me was during Diwali. They had like something that looked like a Christmas tree, but it was like but it had it wasn't a Christmas tree, but it had like styrofoam sort of wedges around it, and they had like Christmas lights around it. And they were sitting and they were in the front room, and they had the Gita open, and they were singing songs, reading the Gita, and they were chanting, and they were putting up offerings. And I just remember recording that and sitting with that thinking, man, this is really similar to what I grew up with. Even like my uncles would have like those storefront churches, or like, and it's just like a few people, and they're sitting there intently looking at the scripture and sweating and praying. And so just interesting. So for me, I'm able to connect to that because I've experienced it, and I'm always looking at how we connect as humans, right? And
Right.
so I find that sort of really intriguing with my work. And so if it's from something like that, or if I'm making a documentary, if I'm writing music, if I'm working with someone designing a building, or working with leaders, trying to help them kind of see the patterns for them to be able to create transformation in their communities. Like all of that goes to that base of, okay, how are we alike? What is our culture? What is our dreams? What are we discovering? What are we designing? What are we deploying? And what are we bringing forth in the world?
That's
Okay.
beautiful. That's amazing, actually. To see it implemented in so many different arenas,
Hmm.
um, while right acknowledging that it has to be an intention,
Hmm.
right? It has to be on purpose,
Hmm.
and then you have to like welcome other people
Hmm.
into right this intention.
Yeah.
Um, and it's cool just like to be in a space and say, oh, like there's I can see their humanity
Hmm.
right in front of me, because I can recognize right the tradition or the practice,
Hmm.
the similarities to culture.
Hmm.
um I want to know how is that empathy, how has that and that connecting served you in the last year, or served others in the last year?
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting for me because one of the strong things I have is I've exercised that sort of thing for so many years through different jobs and different opportunities, that a lot of times when I look at something, I can kind of instantly see what the connecting fibers are. And so
Right.
in the last year, we've had lots of different things that we've done where that's worked. One of the projects I worked on was this thing called In This Place. Last During the George Floyd after the George Floyd murder, and then all the protests that happened after that, we were worked with Claiborne Temple in Memphis to create a way to connect one of the most uh, like per capita. There's more Black people per capita there than Atlanta actually, and but it's actually a very poor place. So we were like, how do we, well, it's very socioeconomic poor, but not poor in other areas, because poverty has multiple levels.
Right.
Monetary is only one of the 9 areas. So just because you may
Right.
not have money doesn't mean you're actually poor, which is really intriguing, right? But so we did this thing called In This Place, and we basically worked on reimagining the future of the South through having talks and having meals together. And we did like it was like maybe a 7-part series over a period of weeks where we did that virtually. So we virtually got together, had talks. Then we did something called story circles, and then we created stories and things like that, and we create a lot of engagement just around that sort of thing. We also, so that was one thing we worked on that worked out really well. We also started to go out into the community and using some of the frameworks that we've created over the last really 15 years with the research I was telling you about. We started connecting cities with the mayor, the school districts, the nonprofit organizations, and the entrepreneurial ecosystem, started to bring them together to engage the community and the community needs, as well as create social innovation in the cities. And so we did that in Arlington, Texas. But all this started happening right around COVID because people didn't know what to do. So that gave us opportunity for us to take our 5-dimensional process that we've been developing over several years and start to deploy that process in the community centers. And then the third thing that we did, we're really excited about, is we started this approach of creating culture films within Fortune 10 companies. So there was a company that we worked with that is a $1 billion company, and they wanted us to use our process within the organization to tell a story about the global company's culture and around diversity and inclusion. And so I talked all this work about empathy earlier, and this idea about connecting with people. So we filmed people in the rural areas of the Philippines. We went out to we worked with folks in right outside of Paris. We were in the United Arab Emirates. We were in St. Louis. We were in Atlanta. And and it was all during COVID. So we created these unique ways to tell these stories. And in that particular project, created transformation even within a $1 billion entity that isn't necessarily designed for diversity and inclusion, but we were able to engineer and give them pathways forward to create new opportunities for individuals in the future and in the present.
No, that's what's up. That's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing that oftentimes can go easily unnoticed, right? Like, unless you got the people who were there to create the space, to make it happen, to put it in practice, oftentimes it's easy for people to just be like, oh yeah, they doing that now, right? But who was the people involved? And it's like, yeah, nah, Art Hooker, right? Tasked with creating or supporting or cultivating, coordinating, making this happen in some capacity. And it's easy for people to lose sight when you're saying this in the midst of a world that is extreme, like in extreme turmoil, in extreme chaos, in a sense of crisis, right? You're still pulling the threads together to tie the different ends of what is it that makes us different and what is it that makes us the same, right? And let's uplift those things and bring those things to the forefront so we can enjoy and celebrate and be more unified in that, versus let's go and lean deeper into the crisis. Let's lean deeper into the chaos, right? I think that's profound to say that, yeah, it wasn't just a Fortune 500, it was a Fortune 10, right? You're talking about a $1 billion organization where they could easily just put out an email and say, we stand by these people and that's it. But then to put to task, like, nah, we need to make the investment in doing something more, right? Doing something different, right? And to speak to that sense of difference in your work, is it that you approach everything in a very like rigid practice, or is it you trying to tailor what's the need in front of you to then meet the outcome that people are trying to reach? Like, what is that process?
Yeah, the big thing is it's really there's a method of study called human-centered design. And so basically in human-centered design, though people make it sound really complicated, but it's really like, instead of like trying to come in and tell people what the solution to the problem is, go in and listen to them about what the problem is and ask them what is the solution, and then you build from there. And so a lot of the people that we work with, no matter we did some work around poverty in America, studied 6 different cities. We were in Santa Ana, California. We were in 5 Points in Denver. We were in the Bronx. We were in Dallas. We were in the South Side of Chicago, and we used the same approach there. Instead of coming in telling people what the story is or telling people what they need to do, you go in and listen. It's a real simple thing. Just listen. It's just kind of like how hip hop, came up. It's like the music that really worked were people that were listening and experiencing and then communicating what they were getting from the street, the heartbeat of the people. You know what I'm saying? So the big part of that work is really specifically around listening and then asking the right questions. Listen first, ask the right questions of the right people. And this is a really core thing in general. We often ask the wrong questions to the right people, and we often ask the right questions to the wrong people.
For sure.
And it's a very critical though, because I mean, as
So-
soon as I stopped doing that, my life changed.
How do you identify, right,
feel
on
that.
those ends? How do you
Mhm.
identify, right? Because you're speaking from a place of empathy,
Mhm.
and some of our listeners, and I will definitely be I'm gonna be dropping this on people's heads
Right.
because they sometimes think they're thinking of empathy when they're thinking of self, right? They're thinking of,
Mhm.
oh, there's a problem in front of me, I need to resolve it, versus
Mhm.
no, what's your problem? And help
Mhm.
me help you resolve it, right? So how do you identify when it's the wrong question? And how do you identify when it's the wrong person and vice versa?
Mhm. Well, the first step to it is that you really can't empathize with anybody else. You really can't connect with anybody else until you connect with yourself. Okay. And
Yep.
so the first question, the first person that you need to ask any question of is yourself. So you're gonna be messed up asking the wrong question and the right question to the wrong person and all that jazz until you first start asking yourself the questions. And the first question you have to ask yourself is like, can I succeed? You have to give yourself permission to win. All right, because a lot of times you're in the game, and so the reason why people got issues with other people and they got beef about something that somebody else didn't do is because they haven't given themselves permission.
Exactly. They self-sabotage and haven't given themselves the permission to win.
Yeah,
And so they racing towards zero.
yeah,
They
and you
whatever
fight
they
with
get, they're
somebody
trying to
else's
get rid of
race.
it. And right,
Yeah,
exactly.
and you fight for
Yeah.
somebody else's stuff, and you ain't even gave yourself the permission, but you mad because they won't. But it's not because they won't; it's because you won't.
You haven't even acknowledged your needs to address them
Mm-hmm.
on how to get them. You just like, oh, they got that. I want that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to
Yeah.
take it from them. I want to take it from them
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying these are my needs. This is where I'm struggling.
Mm-hmm.
This is what my self poverty looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So so then I can say, how do I get out of my own poverty?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Whether it's emotional, mental,
Mm-hmm.
physical, nutritional,
Mm-hmm.
financial, like whatever it is, how do I say, well, okay, I'm thinking I'm empty-handed because I'm looking at their hands,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't even know what I'm holding.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like if you get into a relationship, you can only love somebody at the level of which you love yourself.
Right.
So you can't
go
love
deeper.
if you don't love yourself, you can't love nobody else.
No.
Right. And so, like, if you haven't given yourself permission to succeed, if you haven't opened the doors of abundance to yourself for you, because if you're looking at the world in scarcity, you see what I'm
Let's
saying?
go.
If you're looking at that, you can't.
Let's go,
So you're
Art.
asking the wrong questions. So you're asking the wrong questions, asking the right questions to the wrong people, because you first got to ask that right question to yourself.
Yeah. And
And
Cineo,
you
it's like
got to
you
give
said.
yourself. Yeah.
No, it's like you said. Like people come in asking the questions, like there's a problem, I need to solve it. That's wrong. The fact that you're thinking about
it's
your needs,
imperialism. It's colonialism.
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
They rolling in, right? Say not asking, right? They'll ask, say, well, the property management or the landlord or the county will get asked, right, by organizations. Say we want to come in and help. So we go ask the mayor. We go ask the mayor's office. We go ask the city council. What does the city council need?
Yeah.
The right question to the wrong people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you could ever get it right, if you could, so what you have is you ask the right questions, and the process of doing that is when you're asking the question, because I don't know if you ever done this where you explain something to somebody and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
All the time.
Right. And it's something you're passionate about it. And you're like trying to get them to do something and they look at you like they don't understand. So that's one key to know. Okay. So it's the law of communication. So here's the communication thing. It's your job to make sure that you encode something, and it's your job to make sure that people understand it. But sometimes if you're talking to somebody and they don't understand it, it lets you know. And if you've worked at it, like, okay, am I using the right words? Do you understand what I'm saying? And you still don't get it. It's a clear thing. It's not syncing up. But when I tell you, when you finally, first you got to give yourself permission to succeed. You have to love yourself, because it's all these boundaries that you have. One of the things I would encourage people to go check out is this idea called immunity to change. Immunity to change is something you can apply to organizations, but you can also apply it to yourself. Immunity to change is like we all have things we want to do in life. And if for some reason you just never do it, like somebody be like, hey, you want to lose weight, right? Like you want to get in shape. You got a membership to the gym, but you making a payment and you ain't got money like that to be given away. But people all over the country are just having that membership go every month. Well, immunity to change is like immunity to change is realize, okay, what am I doing? What do I believe this isn't true that's causing me to not be able to change? And so when you're asking the right questions of yourself, you'll start to understand, okay, what do I believe that's not true? And then when you get your thinking right, then it's all about asking, seeking, and knocking. And then when you ask the right question of the right person, and it lines up, when your message lines up with the right audience in the right season, everything changes.
Yeah, the breakthrough, right? The progress, the wheels get to turning, the gears fit, and right there you start to move that needle.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important, for our listeners to hear a few of the things that you said about giving yourself permission to succeed. I think we can become our own worst enemies, but I think before that we're looking outside of self and looking outside of what's happening within. And I think a lot of people may have had the opportunity to sit still in the last year, and then there are a lot of people, a lot of families that were not allowed to sit still, really. Their lives became more chaotic, especially with school-age children. It became a big challenge, on how to navigate, without the support of the education system, with whatever support they, were given. It's, students lacking community, students, lacking engagement, and, trying to navigate through, a digital, communication, as well as, parents not having, proper bandwidth, to support their students, their children. And, I think it's hard to hear that, like, give myself permission to succeed. Like, I've been working this whole time. Like, what does that look like? Right. When I've been doing everything I can to succeed.
What does that even mean?
You have to create you have to try to be open to a new imagination. Because what you find is, and one of my really close colleagues and a new friend of mine, name is Rita King, and she talks about that we're in the imagination age, and it's applied imagination, and this idea of being able to, your imagination can help you shift and change so many different things. So one of the things I learned in just a lot of travels, a lot of working with people around the world, is that you learn quickly who hasn't given themselves permission to succeed with one really basic, simple question. If you ask them, what would you do if you knew you wouldn't fail?
That's it.
Some people, you'd be surprised, some people can't answer that question because they can't think of the scenario that will allow them to do that. And so I've had countless sessions with people where that question, they could not answer that question. And if you can't answer that question, it lets you know that you haven't really given yourself permission to succeed, because you can't even fathom. Because what they'll start doing is saying, well, if this happened and that happened, this happened, I would do this. If this happened, that happened, or they say something crazy like, start singing, if I ruled the world, I'm saying? They might start making up, up stuff, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'd be the king of such and such. But like, those are ways to really see. So it's really about really having imagination to see the world in a way that's favorable to you, in a way that a place of abundance, where everybody can win in creating win-win scenarios.
I think it's much more compassionate to say it that way than to say just be a goal setter, be a goal getter, right? To follow your dreams, right? And instead to encouraging people to have an imagination, for what's possible, right? Is it's not fantastical. It's really base creation, right? Creationism, right? It's what we start out with, right? It's as babies, we start there, right? Imagining things, right? We imagine walking right before we do it, right? We've seen it happen, but as the gross motor skills, come about, we're still not sure where my hand is and where your hand is. But I know my hands grab the couch, and I know my legs, lift me up, and my legs have been crawling me around. But now when I still have to imagine standing, but I don't give up, right? I fall over and over and over and over again. I laugh, I cry, and I get up. I never sit there and say, I'm gonna sit here on the floor forever until someone teaches me hesitancy, right? Until someone teaches me that that you need a break from trying.
What if you lucky, right? What if you lucky enough to have the encouragement, right, to keep on trying, right? If you fortunate enough as a baby to be like, oh, you almost got it, come on, you got this, you could do it again, come on, right? To have that community around you, to have the support, the family, whatever you want to call it, to keep pushing you until your failure turns into, well, you was wrong. You didn't know that? You never knew that? So you mean to tell me, who let you go? Who let you come out the house not knowing that, right? Imagine the world that we live in, where you ask a person, if you could move without failure, right, what would you do? And then it's either I'm gonna go to the extreme and say, right, without any real actual thought to self, I'll be the king of the world, or see, the thing is, right, Wednesday ain't always a good day for me, and then Thursdays, it follow right after Wednesday, and it only leads into the weekend, and I got all these things I got to do on the weekend. So then it's like, how much do you give into your self-limiting beliefs, right? How much do you create the walls that then come to define your existence in that scarcity, right? Because it comes the boundary to box yourself within. Because everything you said, I'm like, come on now. How many times can you hear it from all these different angles before it's a thing that you own and realize, it's within me, right? Because, it highlights motivational interviewing, right? Where it ain't about me having a conversation with you to tell you what you think you need to hear. It's about me asking the right questions for you to come up with the answer yourself. Right? It's simply your personal discovery, because 9 times out of 10, the answer lies within you. Right. And I think it's profound in everything that you said, where you've seen it, right? From being on the phone with Miss Dorothy to sitting there and being like, in this moment, I'm up against my own crises. And you have experienced and expressed your own crises. And in this moment together, we are going to figure out what is that thing, right? For her, it was discovering why. Why didn't I do this? And now I'm doing it. For you, it was, have I been approaching this from the wrong perspective, the wrong angle? Have my motivations not been clear? Because then, as you said, right, Next thing you know, I become successful in this role. My
Mhm.
my ability, right, is now changed and shifted from that discovery of, well, is it really about paying a bill, or is it about discovering
Mhm.
what's preventing you from being able to do what you need to do,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because your approach on the situation makes all the different levels of intention for the impact that's going to
Mhm.
have on everybody around you, to the point where a Fortune 10 company could say, I need that guy to come and help support
Mhm.
in us creating space to
Mhm.
know what does our impact look like, right?
Mhm.
To make those
Mhm.
significant changes, for it to be centered in the human, right? The human who will have to make the changes themselves. And I think that's it's just crazy to me that we live in a society at times, not saying completely, but at times for some, who don't realize it, never get the chance to see it, right? Like you said, you ask a person, what would you do without failure? And it's this thing that, yeah, the imagination can sometimes be corrupted by different factors, right? And I feel like there's a point of intervention that happens for some. Maybe it's this podcast, maybe it's working with art, maybe it's you're reading a book, or you have that epiphany with your own Miss Dorothy, and your own moment of, what, this is going to be transformative. But there's that intervention that happens that then gives a point for discovery for a person to really touch in on, well, who am I really at the core, and how does that propel me to what I want to do next, right? From where I am
Mhm.
to where I want to go. And I think that yeah, it's an amazing thing to hear, to know that from a different perspective, a different angle, that yeah, it exists and it's real, right? To come from Fort Worth, right? I got family from Fort Worth. To
Mhm.
know that you've been able to exceed the bounds and go to Mumbai and see those relational connections, and understanding how that profound, discovery of, oh, this is how we come together, right? Like, as you say things, I'm typing it, looking it up, seeing, and being like, oh, Festival of Lights. Oh, look at all this
Mhm. Mhm.
celebration and love and joy and community and vibrance of life, right?
Mhm.
And it's easy for people to make those distinctions. What Mumbai got to do with me? But in reality, right, we're all
Mhm.
people, right? We're all breathing the same air to some degree. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of a unifying thing that I've heard you bring up, is really finding those lines that connect, and doing away with the things that create unnecessary boundaries, right? We're not
Mhm.
saying, abundance in terms of like lawlessness, right? We're not saying just go for it, get everything, go snatch it, grab it. It's so much you can
Mhm.
have, right? But it's about really understanding the abundance that lies within you to love yourself, right? Because you're right, you can love someone and that love be toxic, right? It could be possessive love, it could be obsessive love, or it can be a sustainable love, it could be a responsible love. It depends on you and how you choose to love yourself and practice that self-love that then projects on the others. And as I've told people, right, don't project your fears on me, because I am not a screen, right? You save that for the movies, not for
Mhm.
me, right? But oftentimes what happens, people have no hesitation in wanting to project their own limiting beliefs on your dreams, right? Or
Mhm.
on your goals, right? And that's what I really want to ask you is, how did you come, like, maybe it hasn't happened, maybe it just never
Mhm.
was something you experienced, but what was the practice like for you in life when you decided, this is what I'm going to do for myself? How did you greet those that tried to project their own fears on
Mhm.
what you want to do for you?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good question. I think what I'd say is so as you're trying to, you're asking the wrong questions to the wrong people. And a lot of times you're asking the wrong question to the right people,
Mm,
right? So as you sync up your message to your audience, and your audience is always somebody also that you can also help.
right,
So the biggest thing I can encourage you is you got to find your people.
right. That's
You
big.
find your people. You got to find your people is critical because, and then you got to be able to figure out, because some people seem like your people, and then over time you realize that's not really your people, right? And I think we've all kind of experienced that. I know I have, right? But so the key to that is you finding out who your people are, and then it needs to be a thing where you're sharing, you're kind of building together, and you have similar goals. But it's just you want to find people also there's this concept that I came across around open source collaboration. And this open source collaboration sort of concept is like when you're working with people and you have ideas and you're all getting these ideas together and everybody can go use it and apply it in ways that work for them. You want to create those kind of relationships that you have with your friends, with your community, so that you can go build. When you have people that aren't your people close in proximity to you, that's when you're at risk, right? And that's when, but you got to find the people that are people of peace. And once you have that, that's where a lot of shifting and opportunities happen. I think it's also important to discover there's some people that you're supposed to help, and there are people that they take, and then that's all. There's some people that are designed to be a give and take, so you got to realize who those people are. Because when you mix up thinking this is somebody that's supposed to, that I'm really here just to help them, it's a one-way thing, and then go on and roll, and you're thinking that's community, you thinking you at home, when really you at a pit stop. You know, so it's really, really important to figure that out.
Yeah, that's important, and you gotta acknowledge that and say, oh, I need to distance myself, right? Because I am becoming stagnant with the energy that I'm giving to this, this exchange, when this energy and this portion of my bandwidth could be used elsewhere.
Getting exploited with no form of replenishment, with no sense of nourishment, right?
That's good.
It's oftentimes, like, it's so true, because it is a thing that is hard for people to comprehend. The ones who started with you ain't always meant to end with you, right? That's sometimes the hardest thing to have to accept, right? The family you were given, you had no choice in. You didn't get to pick these people. You didn't get to pick the community, the house, the home, whatever the case may be. But there's a point at which you can realize, if you can, right? If you are able to listen to this on your phone or your device, if you peeping this on any form of technology, then you have the ability to intervene and find a point of discovery for something more for you, right? You have an access point to information. You have an access point to resources. If you can listen to this, right? So from there, it turns into, maybe where I started isn't where I want to continue to be. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Sometimes we guilt trip ourselves and we think, oh, well, I made it out, or I figured out a way, or I don't want to leave my people behind. But you got to ask yourself, there's something that your heart is calling to that's telling you it's time to go. And you have to really take care and nourish that heart, because that's the only heart that you have, right? Especially in a situation where it's like, well, I see this in you, but do they see it in themselves? I know you can do, but do they want to do it for themselves? Because if you can do it for you and you can see it within you, lean into that, right? Because it isn't to say you can't come back and support those, right? Sometimes it means you need more resources. Sometimes that means you need a place to retreat to. Sometimes you can't fight the battle within the war. Sometimes you got to stand outside of it and find those allies to come in and do a full-on invasion. And I'm not saying it in a sense of violence and a militarized mind, but I'm saying in the metaphor that sometimes you need to walk away, regroup, get the strength and the resources you need for self to come in, to give that level of compassion, thoughtfulness, to give yourself that energy and that space to sustain the level of work you want to contribute to the ones you love. And if you want to walk away and say, you know what, that's not what I want to do, and I want to take care of me and build a new life, you have every means and every right to want to do that as well. But it is a thing where you have to observe, am I sticking around knowing that it's pretty much cutting off every opportunity for me to grow, right? Because you think you're saving the body by cutting off the arm and cutting off the leg, and then you realize you ain't got much of a body left after you cut off all the limbs. And a lot of times I feel like that's what people don't realize they're doing, is I'm gonna give to you, I'm gonna keep giving to you, and then I'm gonna resent you, and then I'm gonna bury myself in this hole, and I'm never gonna look and see how I'm pacifying myself to stay within this unfortunate circumstance that I'm actually putting myself in, right? I'm letting these ideologies and these relationships and these titles frame my tethering, right? My anchor to you. I'm gonna stay here because I love you. I'm gonna stay here because you my brother, you my sister, you my girl, you my man, right? But realizing, am I just putting these unnecessary entanglements, attachments, right? These tangibles these tethering points to then say, I'm really just trying to hurt myself in the long run. And I don't know how to tell nobody.
That brings me to a point of acquiring some information. Art, how did you develop your implementation of boundaries as an empath?
Oh man, that's a hard one. I mean, well, part of it's maturing. It's maturing and getting cut enough times for you to get scabbed, and then learning. Okay, these are certain things. Like learning, like number one, it's like I had a friend tell me this. That's also a creative. He said you're going to be defined more by what you say no to than what you say yes to, and I think that's really important to know, because like it's always think about saying yes and the year of yes, and that's great, but you really what you say no to is critical. And I think another thing is to be aware of what's saying no to you. Sometimes somebody's saying no to you and you're saying yes, and it's saying no, and then you could wait years trying to get a no to a yes when you really should.
Decades.
Yeah, I've been in there, and that's situations like that. And so I think the boundaries is really learning to say no, and understanding that what you say no to is going to create what you say yes to.
Yeah. That's big. Like on your own, closing doors, so that you can walk past it to the next open door.
Yeah. Because the big thing about it is, and I'm working. We're going to be launching a course called "Burn the Door Down." Your guide to radical passion and purpose, right? And so a lot of times we're knocking on these doors. We're like, hey, like let me in, give me an opportunity. But really, you need to burn the door down. But you don't know what door to burn down until you figure out what your radical passion and purpose is. You discover your when you discover your radical passion and purpose, you don't need. That's what I feel like cussing. I get really excited about it. You don't need a door, and whatever door they're talking about, you're really operating in different dimensions. But a lot of times we're focusing and trying to look for an opportunity. The opportunity is not going to be there. But when you figure out what your radical passion, your radical purpose is, and you start taking action on it, you're going to burn the door down. It's a process of spark, flame, burn. And when you figure out how to figure out that spark and fan that spark into a flame, turn that flame into a burn, that burn turns into a fire, you ain't worried about the door no more. Right. And so we're going to be launching and starting to work toward, like, I'm going to be teaching people that kind of thing, because that's really the thing that got me off the phone. The epiphany I had on the phone with Miss Dorothy, I studied that and implemented that in many different ways in my own work. The thing that got me out of being a bill collector and being a filmmaker and being a strategist, that moved me into the spaces where I'm working with the Obama White House, working with rappers or whatever I'm doing, or just in community development work, discover my own passion and purpose. I think all of that comes back to the idea of, like, we're looking for doors when you really be looking for your passion or your purpose, and burn that thing down.
Right. Because the fire ain't worried about no door.
It ain't worried about no door. It ain't worried about no door. It's just gonna burn up was ever in between you and where you're supposed to be.
Exactly.
I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, and I get excited about that. That's when you're gonna be like, oh man, he just went crazy. Because I was like, man, I want to cuss right now? Because I felt it. I'm like, you know, how many doors have you been knocking on? And it's like, it ain't even about the door.
It ain't about the door.
So here's the thing that we have, and this I'll wrap up with this kind of construct, is like, you're knocking on doors when you're actually on the inside of the house.
Right. You in there.
You outside, you knocking on the door. And really, and you like, why won't they open the door? And it's like, stupid, you
already in the house.
Yeah.
You already in the house.
So when you burn the door down, you're burning down the inside thing. There's all these different barriers and things that are blocking you between you and your destiny. And the burning the door down, we think we need a door to go through, but really the door is a barrier.
Yeah, that's right.
You in the house, you foolish. How many people go inside the house, turn around to the front door, knock on it on the outside, waiting for somebody?
Sometimes you got to escape. Sometimes burn the door down, so you got to escape from that house because the house is on fire.
Yeah,
and
right, right.
you're gonna wait to be consumed in the fire instead of like doing the thing you had to do to burn the door down. So you might sometimes you burn the door down so you can get out.
Yeah,
Right. Right. It's like
You know what I'm saying? So
is no you know you are is there's no longer a need for you to stay in this space. You've
yeah,
you've learned what you need to learn. You have been through what you need to do.
mm,
You've
yeah,
experienced. You have seen what you need to see. You have heard what
mm,
you need to hear. All you need to do
mm,
is step out of this space that's keeping you from where you want to be.
mm, yeah.
It is
It's all
not.
about timing.
It is not the home you are to stay in. Right.
Come
it
on.
ain't even home.
Right.
Yeah.
However, it's interesting because like we there's this culture of incubation,
Mm,
right? That before we can send you on your way, right? You need to check these boxes,
mm,
right? Before you can take this class, you need these prerequisites,
mm,
right? Before you can go to college, you need to do this, this, and this. You need to
mm,
jump through these hoops. Before you can
mm,
enter at this level, you need to start at this level.
mm,
And it's just like you say, if I give myself permission to succeed, right?
mm,
I'm imagining you have me writing. I'm
mm,
imagining I want to imagine the shirt, not
mm,
making the shirt. Right. I want to imagine the
mm,
house, not building the house. If I imagine what the
mm,
house is gonna look like, then I can go back and build and say, what do I need to
mm,
build this? Right.
mm,
If I want the organization, I imagine what the organization is gonna look like. Then I can say, what are the steps to get there? Right.
mm,
If I want the family, right? If I want the marriage, I don't imagine the wedding, right?
mm,
I imagine the marriage, and then I go back and say, well, I got to get married.
mm, mm. And a lot of times we spend so much time. So imagination is just the beginning part, but you have to discover what you have to do and then do it.
Yeah.
A lot of time it almost becomes like a pornographic dream. You keep thinking about, oh man, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that. And you get so tied up into being the desire and being able to look at and to fantasize about winning, right? And you fantasizing about it, and you instead of like being connected to actual action of doing the thing that it's going to take to get there, you just happy with just getting off by thinking, oh man, one day I'll get it. And then you sit here, you know what I mean? 30 years later, you're single. You ain't even had no girlfriend. You ain't left your house because you've been thinking about.
You
You've
watching
been
NBA
fantasizing
finals instead of going to practice.
Come on. So, I mean, it's like the imagination is the beginning. It's a beginning stage because you can't really set up the strategy and the pathway. One thing I want to come back to what you said a second ago is really vital. You're like, we're in a checkbox sort of thing where if you do this, you can get that. And so like systems and processes are okay, but you better make sure that you're in the right one. If you in the wrong system, because like we're in a new age where there's different systems and different processes that are changing now. And so if you in this old system checking off boxes, and then you look up, you done wasted all this time to be qualified and to be endorsed by somebody when that's the old system, you know, because the way education is working now, just a lot of different things that are changing. And so you want to make sure that if you are in a thing where if you're being checked off, you got to make sure the right person's checking off. And that's why you got to check off on yourself first. And then when you look at the system, make sure that it leads to where you want to go. There's a book called, oh man, I forgot, but it's a concept called, it's Seth Godin had a book called The Dip. And the book, The Dip, is really, it's a quick read or whatever, but it really tells you when to give up. This is really important because so if you want to get to a goal, like to get here, you here. And then in order to get up there, you got to go down first and then you can come up.
Right.
Now, the problem is if what you want to get that's up here, if it's not something you really don't want, if it's not really worth it, what you'll end up doing is you'll dip, go up, and then you'll just go right back down again. And that's called a cul-de-sac. So you really got to always look at it. I'm fighting every day to get somewhere, but if where I'm fighting to get to ain't really worth it, you know how many times I can't tell you, but you got to really think about it. You be fighting for something and you be like, yo, if I get it, will I be happy? Will I feel fulfillment? Does this lead me to the next space? As soon as you realize sometimes you don't know it until you go through the cul-de-sac a few times. You're like, man, you riding that bike, it's a circle. You like, you don't even know where you're going. He's riding that bike in a circle. You know what I'm saying? So that's the last thing I would say about that, because these systems are important, but that's why the pathway to passion and purpose is critical, because purpose will show you what need your passion meets.
That's it.
And when you get that, you'll never be poor again.
Pathway.
You never need anything again when you realize how you can meet other people's needs.
No, it's real. Pathway, passion, and purpose. I mean, I love the P's. People know that who've been on the pod know I love the P's. Right? People get stuck in their preferences and their personality, right? And they don't break out and understand there's a practice, there's principles, right? There's a certain level of persistence that needs to happen, but I feel it, right? Pathway, right? You got to get on the right path, and I think that I mean, you hit on so many different things in so many different ways, but it all ties together, right, to that sense of understanding and knowing self, right? Whether it's your own personal journey or helping someone else discover what's happening in their own journey, you have to start with you to really have that sense of reflection and really understand that. And I think that you've highlighted that in so many different capacities and spectrums. It's just, I hope people are able to really pay attention, because sometimes, right, they be like, oh, I need to burn the door down, or I'm so focused on getting the door open to have someone open it for me. I don't even realize I need to walk through the door as it's burning down. Right? People got nerve. Well, nobody opened the door for me, so I ain't gonna walk through. We're gonna let it burn.
I can open the door. I think the door is it might be an old construct in some ways, because everything's so flat. I mean, nobody told you if you was gonna be able to do a podcast.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
The
saying?
door,
Ain't nobody,
the table, all that.
Yeah. It was just like you said, whoever somebody decided to do it and you on here, you got a mask. Ain't nobody, you have to get that approved. You know what I'm saying? It's like, this is what I'm gonna do.
I ain't gonna lie, you're right. Because when I was out there in Long Beach, they did not like the mask. So I was like, it's cool, baby. We're gonna rock with it anyway.
We go rock. Leave with it, rock with it.
I mean, for real, because you're right. You don't need to ask for permission if you're not causing harm, right? And that's the thing. We often think that's
very important,
right? Like, oh, well, I need to ask permission for what? Who you hurting? Who is you hurting? Who you gonna hurt? You ain't gonna hurt nobody. Well, you need to go and make that happen then, right? Because we live in a world, right? If you acknowledge you have a sense of free will, if you acknowledge that first, then that means you have the means to make it happen. But oftentimes, right? Oh, I need to clear this out. I need to get validation from, right? I need to get validated. I need you to validate me. I need you to validate my experience. I need you to see me instead of just getting out there, right? So I think, if anything that I've taken away from this is that there is a level of initiative, but there's that level of discovery and owning that discovery to letting that develop into what your true purpose is. And I mean, just for the listeners out there, is there anything else that you want to share and give to the people out there before, we start to wrap things up?
Man, I just would encourage you to explore the question, what would I do today if I knew I wouldn't fail? What would I do? Right. And then if you can come up with an answer, I would say, look at where you're at right now and use, no matter what you're doing right now, if you do what you're doing at the best of your ability where you are right now, with that in mind, you're going to change your life. That is step one. Even if you can't even see how to connect it, if you know what you would do if you knew you wouldn't fail, and then you need to do whatever you can put your hands on right now, you do it the best of your ability, you're going to see some results. And that's one of the reasons we're starting to create resources about this, because I realized that this is something, the specific practical aspect of it, they don't really have it. It's not really clear. And I've been living it, like from being having a job to becoming an entrepreneur. Like I've had to reiterate that over and over again. So I love for y'all to, when we get it, we're going to be doing some stuff on Juneteenth. We're going to start doing the pre sort of launch of it on Juneteenth. And so I love for y'all to be a part of it. And I think it's going to be something that we're going to be doing over, really for the next, as long as I get to live, I'm going to be like, yo, if we got to give people the tools, because I think the change we're looking for it's in us, the change and opportunity. We just got to do it.
Yeah. And I thank you for that. Because it really is a space of, if we want to change, right? For those of us that want to change, right, we are equipped, right? But just by having that desire, right, God has equipped us, right, to carry out what's in our hearts. And like I got a Luke 12:49. Jesus said, I came to set the world on fire, and I wish it was already burning. Right? It's like these constructs got to go. Right? Like the way things are, it's okay. The forest tells us that it's okay for things to burn. The forest tells us that the fire is not the end of life. Right? Refinement tells us that fire is not the end of life. Right? It represents life. Right? And so, right, we move from that space that what is on fire, right, is not dying. Right? And so if we are those entities, if we are those beings that are on fire, right, we are living, right, and we are not dying. Because I feel like this is that year where, right, people getting vaccinated, people got masks on, whatever. If we could have this many protests in a year with through a global pandemic, right, imagine the changes that can happen this year as things start to heal, right, and people start to continue to when people continue to listen to each other, continue to have dialogue, and because it's not the world is not healing because the economy is healing, right? The world is healing, right, because we are healing each other, right, through our understanding, right. And like I appreciate you that that's the space that you occupy, right, of promoting healing. So I thank you for coming on and sharing with us, brother. We would love to have you back. We would love to be a part of those practical examples, as you roll those out, because you're right. Like people need to say, well, okay, well, how am I holding myself back? And where do I go from there? And who do I have? Am I allowing other people to help me hold me back?
And it's real simple, man, but it just is this idea of just like being partnered with the right people. Bro, I tell you, if you can be, sometimes you're locked up because you connected to the wrong people. I know our parents used to tell us that back in the day, where it's like, you either watch who your friends are. But I mean, I can't tell you, I removed one relationship, got removed 2 years ago, and my marriage improved. My business improved. I have more money. I made more films. I made more music. I made more contribution to other people. I started losing weight, and I started losing. I mean, it was one relationship that was taking up. It was a blockage for that. And then you'll find that you are different stages of pruning. So and that's what I'm saying, that asking and listening, like we talked about earlier about listening, but learn how to listen to what is in your face. Because you'd be surprised. Like, it's just real basics. Like, yo, this cat ain't my friend. Or yo, this ain't work. You know what? Every time I'm around this person, I'm broke. And it, you know what I'm saying? And it ain't, you know what I'm saying? This person never pays for the food. You know what I'm saying?
got you locked in like a 401k.
Yeah. Like, wait a minute. Like, am I out this cat's retirement? What's going on? You know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, that is true. I mean, you hit on the head. Is there a way for people to get connected with you to be able to see your work and get in contact?
Yeah, so you can on all social media, it's at Art Hooker. It's ARTHOOKER. So if all the social media, you'll find me there. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and my website is arthooker.com. My company is newmetropolitan.com. New Metropolitan is really based on the idea of like, if we renew, we can renew our cities. So you become brand new, your family become brand new, your family, you know, everybody, everything is transformed through that. So that's everything we do is really connected to that concept of being a new metropolitan. And so, but if you, when you go to Art Hooker, you know, we're rolling out stuff, but it's really about this idea of abundance and that everybody can win if they, and everybody has a purpose, everybody has a passion, and we can change the world together.
We all
really unlocking that abundance. Sometimes just mean getting rid of a couple people in your life, because you know they putting limiters on you, you know, governors on what your abundance is, and we don't even realize it because we giving into them to take that, right? So,
but one of the things that, this is the last thing I'll say. I have this idea early on in my life, and I wish I really got it because I didn't get it. It took me a long time, but it's real basic. I have this story called "In the Company of Haters," right? And we always think about who hating on you. It's might be old school like the South, you know, but all these haters, you know what I'm saying?
It's not old school. It's now.
Yeah. So in the company of haters, this is a very important thing. You're in the company of haters at times, but the number one hater is you hating yourself. You are your biggest block. When you get out of your own way, you're not going to have that many. The problems you have with other people are just mirrors that you have with yourself.
That's it.
Yeah,
Art,
that's it.
Thank you so much.
Randy Watson.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate.
I believe the children are the future.
that boy good. That boy good. Yeah.
Oh, man, that's fun. But I have enjoyed this stuff for real, y'all. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for being here. We definitely gonna try and have you come back on here, and you know, many blessings and good fortune to you and your family. Thank you for your time and energy. This has been highly appreciated.
Man, bless y'all, man. I appreciate it.
Bless.
And let's be in touch. All right, now.
Definitely.
For sure.
All right. You be well.
Peace.
All right, you too. Peace, man.
Peace.
All right. So, you know, when it comes to the idea of burning things, fire, right? I just want to put this out there. You know, the sun gives life. And if you look at it long enough, it'll burn you too. So with that, we're going to get straight to the end of how we like to close this out. I'm just
not expecting that.
Hey, you know what I'm saying? We out here, baby. Fire of life. I'm about to start getting my ditty on at the end of these shows now. I'm gonna start ad-libbing, you know?
Hey.
The fire rises. Art, you can stick around and join us. You can do whatever you got to do.
I feel like I do the Running Man.
Hey.
Oh, I haven't rapped for y'all yet.
Oh,
you got it right now.
Let it go. You got it.
I feel the fire in my bones. I feel my OG coming back to my bones. I can't believe I'm doing this so live, but I'm doing it. I'm showing you the dirty South because we're doing it. They tried to ruin us. They didn't know who's killing us. We're getting hyped and we're losing the fight. I'm freezing, I'm losing my brain, but I'm going crazy. Don't you use this like Cassius Clay. I'm pretty. I'm the best in the world. You better say it to yourself because they throw me out of here. Anyway, that was not cool. That's funny. You know what? This is dope.